Hey, it's Ben. Today we're covering a chapter that I've been staying up quite late to finish within the past few days. And so maybe I'm a little sleep deprived. But anyway, I just want to fulfill my commitment to both complete this chapter and get it posted, and also to come out with this video in conjunction this week. And speaking of this week, the United Nations is now having its General Assembly, and so there are inordinate numbers of police just all over the city, and so there's just inordinate numbers of sirens just going off repeatedly. I don't think the volume's too bad on the sirens. Fortunately, where I'm staying is facing the backside of the building, but maybe we'll have to coexist peacefully, or at least attempt to, with the intrusion. But anyway, again, this chapter that I'm completing, dissolving that huge rock in your abdomen. Now, it does pertain some, the fact that additional weight in our midsection is a concern for many of us, myself included. At the same time, I want to be very mindful. The intent is not in any way to fat shame. We all have issues with our bodies. Every one of us are. I don't know, maybe if you're in your teens, or well, even then, I guess as a young child, you might not be that conscious of it yet, but I think most of us do. And also, it doesn't necessarily pertain to weight either, because quite a few people that I work with, even if they're slim, experience this tension or knotting within their abdomen. And so that can go either with or without the weight. But in any case, we'll start with the weight part as we go through this. I'm going to be referring to my notes because this is quite an extensive article that I'm completing here, and there's an enormous amount of information packed into it. So in addition to watching the video, I would encourage you to read the article. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, and if you like what you're hearing, be sure to click like below, and also subscribe to my channel. So here we go. There are actually quite a few factors that contribute to this this rock that we, and I'm using this term because a woman that I was working with just this past week, that's how she was describing what she was feeling within her abdomen. So I thought, wow, that would be a great name for an article. So starting out here, again, I'll be referring a bit to my notes for parts of this. Visceral fat, a lot of the fact that, our sedentary lifestyle. So this fat, far from being inert, accumulates, especially in the abdominal region, and it releases, as they say, a plethora of harmful substances, and these compounds can constrict your blood vessels, leading to elevated blood pressure. Additionally, they can trigger widespread inflammation throughout the body, impair the body's ability to regulate blood sugar. Visceral fat, often referred to as deep fat, is stored in the abdominal cavity surrounding the vital organs like the liver, the pancreas, the intestines. Unlike subcutaneous fat, which is the fat that you can pinch underneath your skin, the visceral fat has more direct implications for health due to its location and the substances it secretes. Visceral fat is metabolically active, meaning that it produces and releases various substances. Among these are inflammatory markers and lipids. Inflammatory compounds such as cytokines like tumor necrosis factor and interleukin 6 can trigger systematic inflammation, a state that's likely likened to a host or linked to a host of health issues from heart disease to type 2 diabetes. Anyway, there's a lot more detail on that, so I'll let you read the article because otherwise we'll be here for an hour or more if I cover everything. In the yogic traditions, there were guidelines as far as food consumption. That our tendency is that when we overeat and we have this very full stomach, and that can be counterproductive to meditation, to yogic practices. And so according to these guidelines, yogis, those who practice these disciplines, you're encouraged to have your stomach half full of food, about 1/4 full of water or some other liquid, and the 4th quarter would be air, and that way that helps to aid digestion, but and also to prevent overeating. But we're living in a culture that a culture of supersized portions, and we tend to overly stuff ourselves. So I feel, all of us can benefit from becoming more mindful of our food consumption habits. Again, as I said, we're living in a culture where supersized portions are customary. And the overconsumption of foods combined with the toxicity of certain foods and the emotions that we're not dealing with that go unprocessed, that get pushed down in our bodies, it harms our bodies. And when we numb ourselves to our emotions and we disconnect from our bodies, we lose the ability to heed our body's internal signals. During my teens and 20s, I had this voracious appetite. I literally ate like a vacuum cleaner with teeth. In one sitting, I could easily devour a large pizza. I would often go to all-you-can-eat buffets, and I loved them during those years because I would just stuff myself, just eat and keep eating. But as time has gone on, with age, my metabolism, as is what normally happens, has slowed considerably. So if I continue to eat like I did during my adolescence and early adulthood, I would be enormous. So today I eat considerably less. And that's, to be honest, that's one of the things I miss about those years. But if I do happen to eat too much, I definitely feel it. I feel a sense of bloating and stuff. I've definitely cut down on the portions of how much I eat. But the other thing is I do what's called intermittent fasting. I usually have my first meal of the day around between 11 and 1 p.m. and then usually finish up my eating for the day between 5 and 6. But some days it varies. If I have a crazy work schedule, if I'm traveling for work, sometimes I may eat earlier or later or something, but I try to keep it within that range. Much of our food consumption is habitual, and even when we feel hungry or not, is according to those habits. So when I first started doing intermittent fasting, I would definitely feel hungry, not eating early or not eating later in the evening or something, but after some time, my body got used to it. Years ago, I was working with a man in Kansas City, and during the time that we were working together, at one point, it's like the traumas of childhood sexual assault began to reemerge. And as that happened, his abdomen started growing considerably in size. I mean, becoming pretty distended. And it was also very hardened, had a very hardened, armored quality to it. It just was not very responsive to the work that we were doing. And I felt quite a bit of concern at the time, and I would go into Kansas City every so many months, but I was concerned that we weren't able to adequately address the issue at hand. And so, but months later, when I returned, he was toward the end of a juice fast that had already gone on for over a month. And it was amazing, the difference. Like, his body was so much more, especially that abdominal region, was much more malleable, more responsive to the work we were doing. And we were able to work at a much deeper level. A lot of memories and emotions pertaining to that early trauma, we were able to bring that to the surface. He was able to process that. We were able to make a lot more progress. And so fasting can, in many instances, whether it's intermittent fasting, juice fasting, water fasting, can help our bodies in many ways. One, our bodies are just, in many instances, so overburdened or so overtaxed by the food that we're consuming, especially the amount of it and the nature of food, or what we call food, that we're ingesting. And giving our body, by fasting, we're giving our body that time to, or the internal organs, the opportunity to rest and to cleanse and purge themselves of residual toxicity, and to actually digest the food itself. Moving right along here. Emotional residue. See, all of us have experienced, to some degree, trauma and other deeply wounding experiences in our lives. And because we haven't learned to work constructively with our emotions, then much of that trauma and unprocessed emotion, it just ends up remaining trapped within our bodies. And a large percentage of that situates itself within the intestines, our digestive tract, other, also stomach, spleen, liver, pancreas, all that. And it's also held up in the lungs and heart and other parts of our body. But there's somehow, beneath the diaphragm, there's a huge amount of, or a large percentage of this unprocessed emotional residue stores within the body. And for women, there's also much of this unprocessed emotion, stress, and trauma will be stored within the uterus as well. And that can affect menstrual cycles and quite a few other issues. So trauma, unprocessed emotions, and stresses that we internalize contributes to conditions such as ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease and acid reflux, irritable bowel, other kinds of digestive issues. And while not everyone experiences these more severe digestive issues or digestive distress, a large percentage of us are holding a great deal of stress and unprocessed emotions within our digestive tract. And I often ask people, um, have you ever walked into a room and somebody was just incredibly angry or upset, and without them saying a word, you just feel that vibe coming off of them? And the reason you do is because emotions have a certain force to them. They have this substance about them. And so anger, grief, sadness, all these other emotions, just because the immediate stressful or upsetting situation is no longer happening, it doesn't mean those emotions go away. They don't at all. They just remain trapped in our bodies. I don't know if you hear it at the moment, but there's, I think that's a helicopter flying overhead or something. Just more intrusion, thanks to the fact that the UN General Assembly is happening. I hope it will move off in another direction soon. But anyway, refocusing here. The stagnant emotional residue, what happens is that it accumulates in the cells and the organs of our body. And when that happens, it's this heavy stagnant residue sitting in the cells, in the organs, and it impedes their functioning. So they, they can't do a lot, or at least not to the extent that they need to, their normal functions, so the cells have trouble cleansing themselves and the organs. And when you get all this stagnant residue that of all those unprocessed emotions, again, it turns into this heavy stagnant presence, but it also predisposes the cells, the organs to hold on to like the physical toxins, like foods that we don't fully process that remain trapped in the digestive tract, or when we're eating foods that are not so healthy, then our bodies hold on to those toxins as well. And because of the impairment of the cells and organs, their ability to cleanse themselves and all. The other thing is too that stagnant emotional residue, it also, that in itself can contribute to a lot of these digestive issues, in addition to other factors, like what we have gut bacteria, for instance, if the body's not producing digestive enzymes, well, these are factors, but also a lot of the stress that we internalize and the anxiety that can further exacerbate our digestive and elimination functions. So the interplay between our emotional well-being and these other factors, it's all tied together. And congestion within the abdomen, it also adversely impacts our ability to process our emotions. And so anyway, the combination of all these factors can contribute to bloating, our abdomen, becoming distended. And it just becomes a vicious cycle. And so a lot of times what happens is, with the accumulation of all this stress that we internalize, all the emotions we don't process, the foods that are not fully digested, the toxins from foods that we're consuming that are not that healthy for us, is that there's the accumulation of all this toxicity. And many people, they tell me, all the time, that they'll say like, well, all my stress goes to my abdomen. And what makes it worse is that there's this tendency is that a lot of people, because the abdomen feels so comfortable and it becomes this big repository of the physical toxicity and all the emotions we don't want to deal with, for many, it becomes a toxic waste dump. It just like, let me be a little graphic. The shit just keeps piling up, literally and figuratively. So all that unprocessed emotion and stress that accumulates, the physical toxin, all this stuff is just mixing together. It's all interspersed, and it just sits there and it putrefies. And as I said, when we're stuffing ourselves with cookies and cake and candy bars and drinking pop and eating, fast food, hamburgers and French fries and pizza and all that, we're just adding to it. And and if because it feels so bad, then we have a lot of us, we self-medicate with alcohol and other recreational drugs. Maybe we take antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds or something that further numbs us out. And so it's just all sitting down there, turning into a big putrefied mess. Again, a toxic waste dump. So trauma and along with other life experiences, our subsequent emotional responses that, I hear people all the time, maybe they, people are working just horribly stressful jobs and they continue to show up even though they hate the job because out of economic necessity, they have to survive. And, others, maybe they grew up, with abusive parents, or, they're relating a disastrous marriage with a narcissistic partner or something like that. And many people mistakenly assume that just because they're no longer in these situations that, okay, that's in the past, it's over and done with, let's move on, let's get on with life. But much of this stays with us. If we don't actually digest or process these emotions, and not just the emotions, our life experiences and our subsequent cognitive and emotional responses, all this needs to go through a process in which it is digested. And if we fail to do so, or are unable to do so, then it continues to live within our bodies. And when we're going through these experiences, many of us are, it's like parts of us shut down. In order to survive the ordeal, it's like we're living in somewhat of a state of shock, and where we just don't fully register the full extent of what's going on. And people are often surprised, as I work with them, because as I take them, I have them center their awareness deep within the abdomen. Maybe I have them picture an individual or step back into a certain time and place where they were dealing with these past traumas and individuals who did some really horrible things. They're shocked at the amount of emotion, the amount of again, stressful and upsetting emotions and all that resurface. And the reason they do is because our body holds on to that until we thoroughly digest it. And we can access these things afterwards, but once we thoroughly process them, they're going to, we're able to diffuse them so we could remember, but they don't have quite the emotional charge that they initially did. Now, when we first experience, like something triggers us emotionally, our emotions, again, they tend to have this very fluid quality or nature to them. But when we're not able to process our emotions, what happens is that emotional content that normally circulates or flows within and around our bodies and all that, it slows down and it takes on this very heavy, dense quality. It literally, it congeals, and then again it settles into the body's organs and tissues, the cells and everything. And and the fact that we disconnect from these emotions and these parts of our bodies, then much of this emotion is going to remain trapped there. When we disconnect from the abdominal region, we're doing ourselves a tremendous disservice, though, because that it's a crucial part of our foundation. That's where our it's from this abdominal region that we experience our intuition, that deeper instinctual knowing. It helps us to be that much more grounded within our bodies. There's where we experience like greater presence and power, the ability to make things happen in this world that we live in. And so when there's that disconnection from our abdomen, it can leave us very dissociated, very disconnected. We're ungrounded and maybe even just too much up in our heads. So we need to reconnect with our foundation. It's a big part of what I teach people to do as I work with them. And let me check my notes here, see where we're going. Yeah, it surprises me a lot of times because, I have a lot of people that I work with, and they tell me that, they go on about how much work they've done, and yet, and my intention is not to criticize here, but they tell me about how they've been in years of psychotherapy, and that they've done all these visualizations and all the books they've read and all the work they've supposedly done on themselves, but maybe they do a healing session, like one, and they think that's going to resolve the issue. But it's just, and they're carrying just like decades of all this stress and upsetting experience, trauma. And maybe it's not so bad, when you have people in their teens and 20s, because they just haven't lived long enough and haven't accumulated quite as much. But as we get up to our latter 20s or 30s, 40s and on, there's this cumulative effect, and it just keeps building up. One of the things that is really compounding the issue here is that we're living in the age of distraction. So, many of us, maybe we're able to distance ourselves from the distress that we're holding in our bodies, but like our daily routine, the fact that we're having to get up so damn early, commute to work in these long hours, and then, we're constantly pulled to our screens. And at times when we should be unwinding and processing and relaxing and restoring ourselves, it's like our focus is sucked into the TV screen, and we're binging on Netflix, and we're scrolling through social media and in our news feeds and all that. And so that makes tuning into our internal state of being even that much more difficult. And platforms like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, they're meticulously designed to like grab and just hold on to your attention, to keep you coming back for more and to keep you on their platform as long as possible. So it's like the non-stop barrage of stimulus is just like continually like reshaping your neural pathways, and by doing so, it's triggering your brain's dopamine reward system. So you need that next hit of dopamine. You need more of that stimulus. So when our attention is perpetually lured outwards and we're immersed in games and social media, it makes it all the mind candy we're ingesting, it just makes it so much more difficult for us to be in touch with our bodies, to tune into our inner selves, and to really do the deep level processing of our life experiences. The thing is too that they're playing off of a deep vulnerability within every one of us, because at the heart of our external fixation, there's this profound hunger. It's like we're starved. Not for more content, but for genuine affection and human connection. But again, one of the most unfortunate consequences of our heightened external orientation is it just complicates our task of just sitting down, that deep introspective process, where we can truly connect with our internal state of being. And so it makes us oblivious to the immense weight of all the stress and unprocessed emotions and the traumas and all the stuff that we're carrying inside of us. So I also want to mention the impact of psychotropic medications. For most of our human history, they didn't exist. It wasn't until, antidepressants first introduced in 1950s, but they weren't even widely used until the late 1980s. And antipsychotics that were developed between 1954 and 1975. Lithium was researched between the 50s and 60s. The FDA approved them for treating bipolar disorder. What was that, in the 70s? And before we had psychotropic medications, many people just self-medicated with alcohol and other recreational drugs if they had access to them. And the psychotropic medications, if some people with psychotic disorders, that are a danger to themselves or others, probably the best course of action. I've known people with bipolar disorders that were extremely, destructive, self-destructive in ways. So for some instances, as I said, possibly the best solution. And not everyone, but I know a lot of people struggling with anxiety and depression. In many, not all, but in many instances, it has a lot to do with the fact that they haven't learned how to work constructively with their own emotional responses. If we don't know how to deal with our emotions, if we haven't learned, we're not processing our emotions, and we hold a lot of that profound emotional wounding, and we tend to attract more people and situations that are reenactments, basically. Well, what happens is it tends to evoke a lot of painful emotion. So a lot of people feeling overwhelmed, they resort to antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds. And the problem with being on these meds is that it desensitizes us to our emotions. And so a lot of people go on these meds and emotionally they flatline. And I think it's better. I remember the early days of antidepressants, and some people I knew worked with just seemed a bit zombified, and it's not quite to that extent. But what I see when I work with people who are on antidepressants, anti-anxiety meds, is that it greatly impedes their ability to thoroughly, deeply process their own emotional responses. So they'll be triggered by people and situations. But it's like the circuit somehow doesn't quite complete. I don't know if that's the best explanation, but they don't fully register the emotions. They don't fully feel them. They're not able to digest them. And that, again, those emotions don't just go away. they remain trapped in the bodies. And as I'm working with these people individually, it's like there's this deadening within the abdomen. Not a good thing. And it's like with that deadening, there's more accumulation of physical toxin. A lot of times with these medications, however it affects the physiology, I can't fully explain it, but a lot of people tend to gain additional weight. And yeah, a lot of complications. If you're going to take these medications, please look up the side effects, short, long-term side effects. You need to educate yourself. Just, it's just part of, paying attention, knowing what's going on, knowing how things are affecting you so that you can make the most informed decision. Ultimately, it's up to you, your decision there, but do inform yourselves there. Now, I found that over the years in the course of working with people, and I am very cautious to make promises here. However, I have found that many people that I've worked with have been able to get off the antidepressants, off the anti-anxiety meds, and function without them. Lots of people tell me, I no longer need this medication. I feel much better without it. I've worked with people who were bipolar and who they too are able to get off the medications, even some individuals who are suffering from schizophrenia. I'm extraordinarily cautious here, and I closely observe those individuals that I work with because I want to make sure they're in good space. And if for some reason I saw that they were getting into trouble, I'd probably encourage them to get back on the meds. But up to this point, as I said, I've had quite a few people be able to get off the medications and to function without them. One of the things that I see people do that inadvertently contributes to that huge rock that accumulates, like this big undigested stressful mass armoring that happens within the abdomen. I mean, literally for some people, the abdomen just gets really hardened. And is that we think obsessively about our problems, especially if we're in a relationship and someone's jerking us around emotionally, or if we're dealing with patterns of abandonment and unrequited love, and we're wanting to be with someone, that person's not reciprocating our love, and our spouse, is just saying and doing things that are really hurtful, and our mind just goes on, and we're trying to make sense of it, and so we think it to death, and even worse, sometimes we talk it to death. And but in doing so, we go up into our heads. It's like there's this desperate attempt on our part where we're just wanting so much to ease, to make sense of things, and also it's our attempt to cope with this horrible pain that we're experiencing from the person or situation that's evoking so many painful emotions. But the thing is that we could only, our thinking and our talking is only effective to a certain point. But we get into this pattern where we're just kind of looping, and we're going over and over and over. And if we're talking with someone, we're just relating detail ad infinitum and just overwhelming the person who's listening to us, and the person who's dealing with their own problems. But when we do that, one of the things that the damage we're doing to ourselves is that it takes us more up into our heads. But there's, as we're doing that, it's doing what I refer to as churning. And so there's all this intense, we're generating more again, we're generating more of those like really distressing, painful emotions. But we go up into our head, that emotion drops down into our bodies. And so it furthers this divide or this disconnect between our heads and our bodies, and so we're digging the groove deeper. We're reinforcing the pattern that's already causing us a lot of pain, and it's like we get caught in this like incredibly self-destructive spiral by doing that. I've done that, and many of us have at some point. Again, incredibly destructive. What I had to do to myself is, I would literally jump outside of myself and said, okay, you've already said that. Just shut up. What's the deepest feeling behind all that? And I would drop down into those feelings. I'd make myself stay with the feelings and keep breathing them. In doing that, it diffused a lot of the emotional intensity that was driving those obsessive thoughts and that need to just keep talking it to death. I spent years training with the master from China, and the Taoist masters emphasized that obsessive thinking and talking, that it depletes the vitality, the life force from our own bodies, and that of the people that we're listening to. It actually we're sucking the life force out of other people's bodies. Not a good thing. Another term for that is being a psychic vampire. And I know it's not intentional, but a lot of people just inadvertently do it. Very destructive. So that's why I keep asking people, when they get caught up in that pattern, where does that land in your body? That whole drama, this whatever's playing out in your life that's causing so much pain, where does that land in your body? Where do you feel it? What are the deepest feelings? Get inside those feelings. If you can't access your feelings, what are the physical sensations, the tension? So your body tensing up. Breathe with those feelings and sensations, because as you do so, what's going to happen, it's going to enable you to process whatever it is you're going through. Of course, I'd encourage you to combine it with therapeutic interventions, deep tissue body work, work with the gifted healers such as myself, because that's going to go in to even a much greater extent. It's going to enable you to process the backlog of all this intense, highly charged emotions that are fueling the obsessive thought and the talking it to death. So ideally, combine the practice, the intervention, you get the best results. Referring to my notes here. So for a lot of people, all this stress and unprocessed emotion that sits in the body, there's this hardening that happens. It could turn into a number of things. Some people, it's like there's all this intense emotion, and it feels like a very dark and scary place. They don't want to go in there. Thing is, you keep going there and you keep breathing, and it will transform that darkness. And as you digest it, that place will become much lighter, and you'll find this part of your body becomes a place of strength and refuge. Other people, there's just a lot of numbing. I have them focus their awareness there. They can't feel a damn thing. People who go there, a lot of times, there's this hardening. It becomes like dense as a rock. You drink a lot of alcohol, in addition to all that stress you're not dealing with, pouring the alcohol on top of your upset and stress and anger and everything, it further hardens it. And of course, so do psychotropic meds. I'm just checking my notes here. Sometimes I have people go down there, center their awareness in the abdomen, begin to breathe into the sensations. Some people are going to feel nauseous. because of all that accumulation of toxin, physical toxin, the emotions that set there putrefying, hey, that stuff becomes toxic too, and it just keeps building up. Again, some people feel nauseous, and every once in a while, some people actually throw up, but not too often. But if that does happen, it's just your body going through a purging process. Not pleasant, but the good thing, that stuff comes out of you. You don't have to carry it in your body. More people, I think it's like maybe 1 out of 10 people that I work with will tell me that after sessions, sometimes either they're experiencing diarrhea or sometimes this massive bowel movement, and is that it wasn't their normal bowel movement. And so it's just the visceral organs, the intestines, just purging, just kicking out all that excess waste product, undigested food that's set in the digestive tract. There's other helpful aids too that you can also incorporate, like say doing colonics, for instance. That's this process of colon irrigation where they run water up into your digestive tract. That can help to flush out a lot of garbage. Or also doing products like the Rise and Shine, this intestinal cleanse that will ream out your digestive tract. Be mindful though. I mean, if you're just doing the physical interventions or, dietary changes alone, if you're not dealing with your emotions, then you're only going to get so far with it. So if you're struggling with this enormous rock in your abdomen, it's crucial to understand that this has been formulating over years, if not decades. It's an ongoing process to dissolve that. And it involves a number of things. I mean, practice, it's like bring your awareness into your abdomen. I mean, just fully immerse your awareness, drop deep into your abdomen, begin to breathe into the feelings, breathing into the sensations within your abdominal region. I find that by doing this practice consistently, it helps to soften and dissolve a lot of this heaviness, the stagnation, the armor. It can bring up emotions. It often does. If that happens, breathe into those emotions. You need to, combine, practices as well. Again, if working with someone such as myself, I work as a conduit, being trained by a traditional Native American doctor, a medicine man. As I work with people, this presence works through me, and it takes a lot of this heavy, stagnant emotional content, and it's literally transforming it so that you can actually digest this stagnant, putrefied emotional content. Again, how quickly you process this content is going to depend on the investment you make. Ideally, I'd encourage you to be doing practice every day. When we went into lockdown because of COVID, I had all this time on my hands, and so I resolved I was going to do at least 3 hours of intensive practice a day. That extending my time like that, what I found is like, that it just took me, as I sat for longer, I was able to go to deeper and deeper and deeper levels within my own psyche, within my own body. Most of you don't have time like that. I mean, you're busy, you're working, you're taking care of the family, or just, you have a lot going on in your life. And, even if you could only do 15, 20 minutes, at least do that much. If you're dealing with major digestive issues, or if you feel really backed up in your abdomen, it's going to need more time though. So I'd encourage you, work up to 30 minutes, work up to an hour. The more you do this practice, especially if you're doing it consistently, like on a daily basis, and you combine it with some of these other interventions like the colonics and intestinal cleanse, is you're cleaning up your diet. If you work with someone such as myself doing individual sessions, it's going to really cleanse, clean out, purge this abdominal area. And now some people tell me that when they bring their awareness to the abdomen, that it is so hardened that they're not able to penetrate this dense mass in their abdomen. And they're like, well, what do I do? It won't let me in. In that case, what I say is just continue day by day, bring your awareness to your abdomen. And if it's not letting you in, and the reason this happens is this is like a defense mechanism that your body has developed. If it's not letting you in, just feel yourself, feel the perimeter of that dense mass in the abdomen. Hold your awareness in the abdomen and feel the sensations, the energy or the emotion around that dense mass. Just feel what you're able to feel at that time. As you keep doing this day by day, what's going to happen is that those walls, those barriers are going to be dissolving. And it's going to allow you in at a much deeper level. When that happens, most likely, again, you may experience sensations like nausea, the physical toxin that's stored in there. Very likely you'll have emotions, you'll have memories surface. All this is part of the process. So just whatever you feel, breathe into it. Keep doing the practice. And again, you really want to clean this up. Work with me or someone working in my capacity, and it will greatly accelerate the process. Numbness, lack of sensation. Yeah, many people, I bring their awareness to their abdominal region, they don't feel a damn thing, because as we go through our lives and we're disconnecting from our emotions and the realities we don't want to deal with, there's a lot of numbing that happens, a lot of desensitization. So what happens is much of the population is living from the diaphragm up. Again, it's this profound disconnect. And even worse, some people live from the throat up. And so as you work with this practice, one of the great benefits of doing so is it draws you much, much deeper into your body. You become more grounded, more whole. You integrate more with the various aspects of you. So you become a lot more powerful. But if you can't feel anything, one thing that helps is place your hands. I have the camera set, so it's showing me from the from the chest up here, but place your hands. I'll stand up. Place your hands over your abdomen and keep your hands there and breathe into any physical sensations at all that you feel, even if it's the sensations of your hands resting on your abdomen. If that's all you can feel, breathe into that. As you keep doing practice day after day, and you're breathing into the to the physical sensations or any emotions there, your sensitivity will gradually increase. When I first started doing this practice, I think I was 30 at the time, I didn't feel much of anything, little numbing, little heaviness, congestion. But as I kept doing the practice day after day, I started feeling all this gradually rumbling, churning, pulsing, tingling. Sometimes I'd become a little gassy, it would come out either in belching, farting. Sometimes as it's stirring all this stuff up, you end up having to run to the toilet. It starts purging your digestive tract. Your physical digestion actually improves as you do this practice. And so it's of great benefit for you to take the time, invest the time and energy into this practice, because it's going to clean out your digestive tract. So ground you into your body. You're going to become much more whole, integrated, present, and powerful. Wow. What else? So again, in the beginning, even if you don't feel anything, and it may take some time, could take a few days, could take weeks, maybe a month or a couple of months. But if you keep doing it, this awareness will increase and you will become more connected, more integrated into your body as a whole. So what do you do when your emotions do begin to surface? Whatever you feel, best of your ability, stay present with it. Fully open to your authentic feeling or emotional responses. What do you feel? Where are those feelings within your body? Immerse your awareness in the feelings. Keep breathing softly and deeply. Follow those feelings and sensations as they go through their progression. We're getting close to wrapping up. We don't have too much more here. How long should you be doing the practice? Well, as I said, I went into lockdown. I was doing hours a day. Even now, most days I'll do a good 2 hours. But I'm doing a number of different practices. So sometimes I focus in the abdomen, or I'll do some of the other intensive meditation practices of the series that I developed. But as I said, start out at least 15 minutes, work up 20, 30, 40 minutes, do longer if you can. The more time you devote, the more powerful it's going to become. A lot of times your attention's going to wander. And I've had people tell me that when they focus in the abdomen, they felt like it just kicked them out of there. They couldn't stay focused in the abdomen very long. They'd go down in the abdomen and throw them out, and they'd refocus and throw them back out again. But if that happens, just keep bringing your awareness back to the abdomen, because the more you do this, you're going to develop the ability to stay present. That getting thrown out of the abdomen, that's just part of the defense mechanism. But these defenses, they often outlive their usefulness. So just keep bringing yourself back. The more you do so, the more grounded that you're going to become. So there are so many benefits to working with this practice. So I'd continue. I'd encourage you to do it and keep doing it. Quite a few people that I've worked with over the years, and again, I'm cautious about making promises. I've seen people where their abdomen would shrink in size, or just they would drop weight in general, not just the abdomen. Or there would be like a flattening out within the abdominal region. And many people have reported this to me, and also just, when I would go back, or someone would come back to see me and for follow-up, and I would see this reduction in size or this flattening taking place. But other benefits too, as I said, that you gain a lot of insight. As you begin to inhabit this deeper foundational part of your body, it helps you to access your intuition, to this deeper instinctual knowing. It's from this deeper abdominal region that you gain a sense of your life purpose and direction. You feel in your body what it is you need to be doing. It's from the abdominal region. I find, there's so much emphasis on opening the heart, but I actually find that the deepest level of empathy comes from the abdominal region. We see a lot of the destruction of the planet and wars and violence playing out, and all kinds of really toxic dysfunction in the world, politically and otherwise. And a lot of it has to do with the shadow that we create when we disconnect from our deep emotional wounds, the emotions that we don't want to deal with. What happens is that we're actually feeding that collective shadow. And as we do that, it just adds more fuel to the fire. We're feeding the beast. But as we do the deep internal work, we take the steps needed to facilitate the healing of our deep emotional wounds, it has a ripple effect that instead we emanate a different kind of presence that affects healing in those around us. So I've said so much in this chapter. I've said a lot of things I didn't include in the chapter or the article that I wrote, and there's a lot of things I said in the article that I didn't include in the video. So you got a lot to work with here. So if you're watching the video here, as I said on YouTube, click like, if subscribe, and also go back and read the article. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to work with me individually, if you need help to do this practice, to develop a proficiency in it. It's an extraordinary, powerful meditation practice that I can teach you, that I can share with you here. So yeah, do feel free to reach out to me. My Google Voice number where you could reach me is 332-333-5155. Again, 332-333-5155. Do reach out to me if I could be of assistance.